Yesterday, I was laughing my ass off. There was some headline: Joel Hoekstra has no intention of cutting his hair anytime soon, and I was cracking the fuck up. That's a slow news day, man, especially when the world is blowing up. That there's an article about me not cutting my hair.
So today we've got a special guest who truly defines the phrase, one of the busiest men in rock and roll. Fresh off the Trans-Siberian Orchestra tour and gearing up for the release of his new solo album, we are thrilled to welcome guitarist, songwriter, and all-around workhorse, Joel Hoekstra. Joel, how are you today? Welcome to Metal Mayhem ROC.
Hey, doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Why is it Joel Hoekstra's 13? What's the significance of the 13?
Yeah, earlier on in my life, kind of before I became known in a lot of the I guess what you'd call the 80s rock resurgence, right? With Night Ranger and Whitesnake, etc. I'd released some instrumental albums, and they were kind of more along the lines of the fusion vein. Like one I would almost describe kind of fusion-y, was all over the map, but then I put one out that was more proggy, and then I had a fingerstyle acoustic CD that was almost kind of like easy listening. I mean, so what happened is, as things became more like, I guess, successful for me in this 80s scene, a lot of the fans were going and listening to my solo albums and going like, what the hell is this? And so they're like, hey man, you should make solo albums that are rock. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to do that. So rather than do something that was like all about the guitar chops, I felt more motivated to do something that sounded kind of like I was doing with those bands, but something where I would have the control over, like be able to write the lyrics and the melodies that the singer would sing and all the riffs. So that I kind of just decided to give it a project name. It's confused a lot of people for sure. But Joel Hoekstra's 13, I mean, you're in a long list of very confused people over it. But Joel Hoekstra's 13 are those albums. So I've released 3, and this one coming up is going to be the 4th. The first 3 were Dying to Live, Running Games, and Crash of Life. And now From the Fade is coming out in February.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we thought it was some other significance, a birthday, maybe you had affinity for Dan Marino, the greatest quarterback in the history of football, who was number 13, but that's just my personal opinion.
I mean, I'm a Marino fan, and I'm a Bears fan from '85, and he was the only guy to beat him that year. The Dolphins put that one loss on them. But Marino was fun to watch, incredible arm. At 13 it kind of just been like a lucky number. There's really nothing more to it than that, I guess, just something that I was like, cool. And, it seemed like it had a little, like, I didn't want to go with anything long, yeah. Joel Hoekstra's blah-diddy blah. You add like a few words to that. So I thought just maybe the number, and that's kind of cool. It's got like a shortness to it, but it's done nothing but confuse people, really.
So
honestly.
Well, again, first off, congratulations on wrapping up yet another successful TSO tour. I did not see the Jersey show this year, but I've been at many of them. They're amazing. But I'm curious, you come out of these runs because they're massive. They're 6 weeks. You're doing double shows on certain nights. Are you energized or like the opposite, completely exhausted when you finish that last show on the 30th?
I would say, I'm fine to keep going. Like, I don't need, like, New Year's Eve, I played with the Rock of Ages band. So, I mean, I got home and I, like, went in. I will say, though, on that gig, it's, like, really hard to shift gears and be like, okay, yesterday I played 2 arena shows, and today I'm playing a small theater New Year's Eve show, with totally different set of music and amp on stage. And so it's all of a sudden there is a gear shift that happens, and then getting used to plugging myself into the work that happens at home. I just kind of recuperate as it goes, man. I'm not a big believer in like taking time off, and it feels counterproductive at this stage for me, especially, and really for a while. I mean, I've just kind of been like, my whole thing is like a daily process. That's how I look at all this stuff. Like, the music and career and all that stuff is just kind of like a daily thing. So I have a tough time taking a day off, man, honestly. Like, in terms of like just nothing, like that just almost like never happens. Like where there's nothing productive.
What to do. As creatures, we don't know what to do when we have nothing to do. But So, Joel, I'm always curious too when you do those double shows. Like, okay, the first one's at 3 o'clock, it goes to 5:30, whatever. You got a couple-hour break. Like, how hard is it for you to transition out? Take the sweaty tuxedo off. Like, you don't have much time to relax, reset. Like, what goes down in those 2.5 hours in between?
Um, a lot of times it's funny, but we actually do. A lot of guys in the band do like actually nap.
Mm,
Like take like a half an hour or an hour and just like go to sleep and wake back up and do the next one. That sounds pathetic, but it's like it kind of resets you for it a bit. Like if you get a little rest in there, possibly eat a little something, and like, maybe take a nap. I mean, this is like super boring stuff. There's really no like set script. Sometimes it's just spent poking around on your phone and chilling, and then you go back out
okay.
and do it again.
It just seems from the average person's fan perspective, seeing the intricacy of that tour and how big it is, it almost seems like wow, it's grueling. But one thing I wanted to comment on, I personally think the TSO East is the best. I mean, not that there's a friendly competition, but kind of with the Savatage reboot gaining momentum. I mean, you have Jeff Played and Zach Stevens in there. John Oliva
I,
attends some of the show. Like, did with the reboot of Sabotage, did it kind of translate over to TSO? Was there a different vibe or excitement this year because of that whole Sabotage impact?
no, I mean, those guys are guys that I've been working with since 2010 now. Chris Caffrey, of course, you did
Okay.
not mention, but on the East, we have Chris Caffrey, Jeff Playton, Zach. And so those are guys that I've been working with for a long time, Jeff and Chris in particular. And, they've had a good deal of frustration, I think, in wanting to be out there touring and doing it. And so seeing that happen for them is something that I'm really happy to witness. I said to them, I'm like, man, I've never felt so happy to see gigs go up online that I wasn't a part of ever. Like, just because I've known them for a long time. And so to see them revitalize this year and get back out of Sabotage was fun for me. And it's well deserved for those guys to get back out there and hit that stuff. So very, very happy for them, really, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hope for some U.S. dates, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed. But hey,
Yeah.
let's move into the new album. So, listen, it's a great one. I've had the release from the Fade. It's excellent. I've spun it all week. In the notes, you kind of mentioned that the songs were built from the guitar riffs up, and a lot of it was written while you were filling in on that Accept tour a couple of years ago. So, just curious, did that heavier environment sort of shape the DNA of the record? Was that an influence there
Yeah,
for you?
yeah, like inadvertently. I mean, it wasn't like a plan. It just, the
Uh,
way I approached it from the sometimes with these albums, I've taken some pre-existing stuff that I've demoed or maybe put together for other people, and all that didn't gain traction. I'll go, yeah, you know what, that was actually really cool. Like that can be used. This one, I was like, screw it. I don't even want to bother going back through old ideas. I just want to like write 11 things. I think it's 11 with the bonus track. And so basically, it was very methodical. It was like one a night. And I would come up with, I would just riff with my guitar. And by the time I was done, part of my internal deal with myself is like have a structure, have the way you want it
okay.
laid out. And that was strictly like just, recorded in the iPhone, like on voice memo or whatever. And like, had 11 ideas, and then the next thing was to get that down to a click, like a metronome, in
Mhm.
Pro Tools. And um, usually the next step is writing what the singer will sing. And a lot of times the melody comes to me typically before the lyrics. The lyrics take a little more time. So I might have like a hook in mind, like for the chorus or something, but like when it comes to like writing a verse or that stuff, to me is like almost needs its own moment. So I'll,
Okay.
I'll play the melody on guitar first, and that's what Vinnie Appice gets, right? So he'll get, when he's laying down his drums, he's hearing my rhythm guitar, basic rhythm guitars, even no like overdubs, just basic rhythm guitars, and then what the singer will be singing roughly on guitar, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was going to say, the pedigrees of players on the album is outstanding. I mean, you don't see that on every release, but for the fans, you got a veteran rhythm section. You got Vinny Appice, as you just mentioned, and Tony Franklin on bass, as well as Derek Sherinian on keys. So it's an all-star cast, but like, when you hand your music over to these guys, how do you keep that focus tight and purposeful for them once for players of that caliber, what gets them going on this?
Because I just basically let them do whatever they want. And that helps. I mean, I've been hired on a lot of stuff, and it tends to be like the smart move, I think, when you're producing something. I mean, I use the term loosely with producing these. I mean, I have the most certainly to do with my own albums, but it's, I don't engineer them. Like when I say I produced it, it's like it's my vision. I work with a mix engineer, Chris Collier, who does an awesome job. And he deals with all my mix requests, et cetera. Like I kind of oversee the mix. But I know from being hired on enough things, I do my best when people are like, just play. So you find the right guys and then you just let them do their thing. So the songs are structured by me, and Girish, the lead singer, Girish Pradhan, he probably gets it the worst because sometimes I'll be a little married to like the melody I'll have in my head. If he sings something different, I'll be like, dude, can you follow the guide vocal? Eventually what happens after Vinnie's on there, I'll actually sing a guide vocal. Once the lyrics are written, I'll go through and sing the record myself, and then Girish is hearing the record sung by me, and he just sings it way better than I would. Essentially, I mean, it's something where there's some leeway for him, but not as much as the other guys. I mean, Vinnie, Tony, and Derek, it's pretty much like, just do your thing. I rarely give them anything as far as requests, maybe a couple things here or there, one or two a record or something.
Okay, well, we'll talk about some of the tracks where, my favorites. But, speaking of Girish, the singer, I mean, to me, he's a hidden gem. And I know you've had him on your last album, but where do you find a guy like that? Is this something Frontiers discovers and then he says, hey, Joel, I got this perfect match for you? Or is it like you found this guy because he's obviously from India? He's not from the States.
Yeah, it came through Frontiers. I mean, okay. I started out when I first put this project together. Russell Allen was joining Trans-Siberian Orchestra, right? So he came on my radar at that point in time. I should have probably had known of him, but I was like, well, this guy's perfect, man. I was really wanting a Dio-ish thing, but be able to do some ballads that were kind of cool ballads, like Foreigner type ballads, or have some soulful moments like Paul Rogers. So I was looking for Ronnie James Dio meets Lou Gramm meets Paul Rogers, which I know is insane, but that's kind of the model in my head of like what I wanted. And Russ could really do all that. So I was like, wow, this is great. And Russell came in and he had a challenging schedule on the first one on Dying to Live. Jeff Scott Soto has been a longtime friend of mine, so he sings the backing vocals on these for me, which is amazing and really a blessing. And it really makes the record sound awesome. He's really great at it. And he's fronting so many projects already that he's totally cool with that. And I just try and make sure to give him special mention that he more or less does it as a favor to me. And so Dying to Live, what ended up happening is Russell's schedule became challenging, and Jeff ended up singing lead on the second half. And the second album, Russ sang all the lead vocals, but it took forever with his schedule and everything. And it just was a really long wait. So when it came time for Crash of Life, I was kind of like, man, it's not me, guys, at the label, like why it's so late all the time. The records are taking a long time, and they understood, and they were like, how about this guy? And they hit me to Girish, and his band Girish and the Chronicles, he kind of sounds like Sebastian Bach or something, a lot of screaming, which is awesome, but not necessarily what I had in mind for this project. So I ended up talking to Girish and just sort of seeing how things went and saying I was looking for more of this is the model. And he is a chameleon and is capable of doing a lot of different things with his voice. I think his vocals on both of these albums, Crash of Life, you mentioned, came out before this, and now From the Fade, are great. I think I tried to put him more in my mold on Crash of Life. And then what happened with this record is I took it to a heavier spot, kind of, I guess, a little bit with him in mind. I mean, I try to write, when I'm writing for these, think about who's going to be on it. And certainly then with the melodies, I wrote a lot more of his screaming into this. So there's a lot more of Girish's, I guess, his wheelhouse with that. I wasn't big on that for running Crash of Life. I'm sorry. I was trying to just think well, this is what I want. And I think that was something where Girish came on after I'd kind of written it. And so this was really the first one where the melodies went down with him specifically in mind, if that makes sense.
Sure, certainly does. I mean,
Yeah.
as you said at the top, although you wrote the album, I guess on the tour bus with Accept after the show's over, which is amazing in of itself. It's like holy crap, but it's not heavy metal. This is it's got a heavier edge, but it's clear that this is melodic hard rock. And when you get into the album, like the opening tracks, for example, You Can Give in the Fall, which is your first single, they're both energizing tracks with big choruses. So just curious, do these songs sort of make a statement about what you wanted to go for on this album?
I mean, I've always been a sucker for like big choruses and catchy choruses. And then a lot of times my more successful songs are written kind of chorus out, where it is just about the melody first and not a guitar riff. Like Hard to Say Goodbye off of Running Games is a prime example of that, or Until I Left You. Those are songs that were kind of written. Until I Left You was written with me on an acoustic guitar and thinking mainly about this is long before I was doing Joel Hoekstra's 13. That was a pre-existing song that I had written. So Hard to Say Goodbye was something I wrote, not even with a guitar in my hands, having the chorus in my head, walking around, singing. And I was going, that's a good chorus, and let me figure out what the chords would be to it once I picked up my guitar. So those songs tend to do well. So it was interesting with this record because there's none of those type of songs. It's like it's mainly like right out of the gate, like I'm going riffs, and there was sort of intently placed on this a couple more commercial-ish sounding ones, those being like Lifeline and Will You Remember Me, that were a little bit more along the lines of like, hey, this will have a good, melodic side to it, or I guess commercial hard rock. I don't know what you want to call it, man, all these labels. Sure. But for me, it's just stuff that falls under the scope of what made me want to start and what I dig, which kind of ranges. My main wheelhouse, I guess, goes to poppier stuff that I would heavy up all the way to like just metal, and everything in between. So it's certainly the core of that is just like melodic hard rock. And I think that's something that my fan base too, like you don't want to alienate who's started to follow you from the bands you've been in and what they would expect. So doing like a full-blown metal album just probably would, be like something that would be like not well received by my fans, so you try to like have something there that's, and also, like I said, that's what made me want to start guitar, is that kind of stuff. I mean, everything I listened to was kind of I guess like the thrash days and whatnot, like that just wasn't happening. It's certainly like the new metal, like, where that just wasn't a thing yet. So a lot of it just goes back to like early inspiration, man, and just trying to like pay homage to that, like what got me into playing. And that is ultimately what went well for me on guitar. I went through a lot of different phases playing for all kinds of different things as my timeline would have it. I graduated from GIT like in 91. And so that was kind of like, Smells Like Teen Spirit is out, and like, you better not show people that you can play with any chops or you'll never get a gig, like ever play with anybody. So it was an interesting time period until that 80s resurgence kind of occurred.
Sure.
I still was doing like some of that type of gigging and playing, and that, like, ultimately what led to Night Ranger was me playing with Jim Peterick from Survivor and doing sessions for him and playing in his world stage band. So that stuff was still alive, but in the meantime, I was also playing with all kinds of other stuff. Sure. I'd been through all kinds of different genres and whatnot. I've played in acid jazz bands and hip hop bands and backed up tons of singer songwriters on acoustic gigs, and I mean, you name it, dude. I've done all kinds of stuff that people will be like, huh? And been in oldies bands, like I was in the Turtles and Big Brother and the Holding Company. So that's a lot of stuff that people like, I guess normally in the 80s scene, that wasn't the way their trajectory went. If they were old enough, they got a deal when they were in their young 20s, and their band broke it big, and then they've kind of been them ever since. And for me, it was a longer path, but it's all good, man. It all worked out in the end,
It's well, I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your timeline there. We have on our show, we have a history of heavy metal series where we go year by year and we dissect the themes, the events, the albums that we do. And we're up to year 2000 now. We started in 1973, but you're right. It's an amazing transformation, especially from the 80s bands. It all hit the cliff about 89, 90. But then it came back in 2000. So there was that
Yeah.
resurgence coming. So, in your liner notes, Joel, you mentioned Queensrÿche and Dokken as some of your early influences. Like, where do you think those bands show up on the album? Is there a place where you say, okay, there was a Queensrÿche moment here, Dokken moment there?
Well, I think The Fall is definitely a Queensrÿche influence track. I mean, it's been one of the first times I've ever literally referenced a band to one of the players. I told Vinnie, look, I'm picturing like in my head, I thought this sounds kind of like the chorus sounds kind of Queensrÿche, man, and the main riff, like the intro riff. And
Yeah.
that's something where those are, I guess I really wanted to cite Queensrÿche and Dokken because they're like two influences that I forget to mention all the time. I kind of have, you do enough interviews and you start saying the same names all the time.
Of
Because early on for me, it was AC/DC, Sabbath, Ozzy,
course.
Maiden, Scorps, like kind of just like that's what got me going. But then like I usually skip to like the melodic bands that weren't as heavy that I got into, like Journey or Foreigner or Boston. And then I mentioned proggy bands like Yes and Rush, and then I dig classic rock bands like Floyd and Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix. And then, of course, there were all the guitar albums, right? So that's my typical spiel where I go to say the Yngwie and the Vai and Satriani, Steve Morse, like that stuff is all big for me. But I get to the end of that and I realize years later, I'm like, I'm forgetting to mention like Dokken and Queensrÿche and this stuff. And that's like, those are two really big ones for me. I mean, they might have been like right up at the top of the list in terms of who I was listening to as a kid, like with my guitar. My first band, primarily, in addition to our own songs, covered Dokken. I mean, that's what we did. So, for whatever reason, it's not intentional. Like I said, it just kind of turns out to be one of those things you realize years later. So I wanted to give them like a little shout out, I guess, and talking about like where some of my sound comes from, because I've probably done them a disservice by not mentioning them to this date amidst that list of who is an inspiration to me.
Well, it's funny if I'm not a musician, but if you and I compared CD towers, because I still have like 7 CD towers, we'd probably have all the same stuff in there. So there's probably a couple you're not thinking about. But you're right. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I'm
There's
55
still
years.
things left out. There's still things left out
Oh
for
yeah.
sure, man. But I try to hit like what I guess try to explain to people like the depth of what was happening, and that guitar album thing in particular was kind of cool because you could follow people like based on their proficiency rather than like, hey, is it hard rock or metal? And that's kind of because that 80s scene had the Guitar Hero thing going on. So it was kind of cool to say like, hey, I'm listening to Alan Holdsworth, or I'm listening to Al Di Meola, or I'm listening to Stanley Jordan was big for me because obviously the independence of the right hand and everything he was doing with the two hands on the fingerboard. I don't know if you're familiar with his playing at all,
Yeah.
but that's like stuff that was cool to do. And you could listen to classical players. You could turn on like Christopher Parkening, or as long as they were virtuoso players in that genre, like in that, it was still cool, if that makes sense, in that time period.
Sure. Well, Joel, when you put out your next Joel Hoekstra's 13 album, I want the liner notes to reference Badlands and King's X. So there's your inspiration.
They were not. Neither one of those for me were on my radar. Amazingly, because it's awesome stuff, both of them, and I like them both. Like hearing them in later years, but neither one of them were on my radar when I was a kid and like obsessing. It's funny. The older I get, the less I'm capable of listening to anything for more than like a song or two. I think it's because I just work with music so much that it just becomes when I get some free time, I'll put up a song and be like, okay, I'm done. Like,
Yeah, you got
no matter what it is, even if it's awesome, like even if it's totally incredible and inspirational, I'll be like, that's great. My brain's tired of music. Let's give it a rest.
Got to do something else. I mean, speaking of awesome songs, I love the song Misunderstood. I think it's soulful, but it's kind of aggressive and a bit angry in the vocal delivery. But I like about it, going back to Vinnie and Tony, there's a section where you guys kind of open up a jam. So maybe comment on that one and what's going on with the storyline with that one. You had a bad day that day when you wrote that one?
Yeah, you mean because it's a song about me killing someone? I mean, no, I mean, it was a vibe, you know, it was like written off a vibe, and I suppose you follow that emotion and that vibe, and like, you know, obviously I don't have any intention to fucking put anybody under my floorboards anytime soon, but it was obviously like fun to write, and I was like also looking for, at that point in time, I think by the time I was on Misunderstood, I was looking for something that, so a lot of the records will have a theme, right? Like Dying to Live was about pretty much me quitting drinking and getting sober, you know? And like all the lyrics kind of follow that, and Running Games more or less about like 2019, when I was writing that, I had been on the road 285 days that year. So it's kind of like, you know, what is it about all this stuff that has me alone in a hotel room like forever for my entire life? Because I don't really, you know, consequently, because of not partying, you tend to like hang in your room. And so that's kind of what Running Games was about. And, you know, it's like everything grabs a theme. And for this one, it was kind of, I guess, grappling with music itself, you know, like what music has meant to me in my life, and my relationship with all this stuff. So a lot of times what you're listening to lyrically is like the music singing back to me, if that makes sense, or
Sure.
how I feel about like this whole musical career of sorts, you know?
Sure thing. Sure thing. Well, appreciate you opening up on that. One more comment on one more song, and then we're going to move on here. But The End of Me, this track is heavy. It's doomy and epic. I mean, I hear Vinnie in this one. He must have been like, oh, yeah, man, I get to go off. I get to do my thing here. Dio Sabbath. So maybe comment on that one. Like, how did that one come out? It's a metal song. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was kind of intentionally gunning for Sabbath, you know, with Dio. Kind of thing. I mean, I'd say mixed in there's some heaven and hell vibes going on. There's a little bit of like the song Heaven and Hell. I'd say one of the main riffs has a little bit of the Electric Funeral riff, which I've always just been like, that's the greatest riff, except for the middle of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. That's the heaviest guitar riff ever written. But yeah, probably a little bit of that. So like it was like kind of a Sabbath thing, but then when it kind of speeds up, almost more Metallica almost for a second, you know? Like I try to do a little bit of the I guess just aggressive shred right out of the gate when it's sped up, and go with that kind of vibe. Yeah, I mean, just that's the heaviest track I think that's been on one of my records. There was a bonus track on Dying to Live that was called Kill or Be Killed that might have been along the same lines. I mean, it was written distinctly heavier than the rest of the album, and that Dying to Live was hard, man, because there was such a variety of music on that it became like, man, when something needs to become the bonus track, maybe it's like trimming one of the extremes so the album veers one way or another. Like when I started writing Dying to Live, it was much more metal. And I think as it went on, I started becoming like getting much more of just like kind of stuff like Until I Left You and Start Again and What We Believe being on there that are not as heavy, but I guess more like tapping into other things that I'm influenced by, you know? So The Enemy is probably I would say that's probably the heaviest one on the record.
Yeah. It's a good one. I mean, there is a lot of good variety on there. It's an excellent album, and I wish you success with that one. But you're also busy. After I booked this interview with you, across the desk came the release from an artist you also have been involved with that'll come out this year, Austen Starr. So what initially caught your attention about her? Because, wow, what a voice.
She's just really cool, and she was working at rock and roll fantasy camp, and had this song Medusa that she ended up releasing as a single for this album. And I was like, you know, that sounds great. I just sort of like flippantly said to her, like, hey, you should write like 11 songs like this and get a deal with Frontiers. And she kind of followed up on it. I was like, well, I mean, would you want to take that on and like help me write this? Because she's a guitarist, but like not necessarily geared to like writing all the songs. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And so just kind of like took it on as like a get somebody started, and another opportunity where I guess like as an album as a whole, like I had a fair amount of say so because I was kind of co-writing everything, and then I brought it to Chris Collier, and same deal there. Like I know how to work with Chris. I kind of oversaw the mix on that and everything, and how that was going to go. So yeah, that's a cool record. That's something that's really different. I mean, different age bracket, man. You know, she's like young 30s, and something where she digs like the classic rock stuff. So I think the fact that I brought a little of that into like her main stuff is kind of like emo stuff. Like she's into like Fall Out Boy and like My Chemical Romance and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, you know what? Let's just make a damn album, and like, who cares about all these labels? You know, the thing is, you listen to those bands, like I think that's great stuff. It's just a different generation, man. Sure. It's you know, different ideas, like where it comes from. So she just gave me like 11 songs that she's into. And she also likes the Pretty Reckless, and like, you know, I was like, you know, this can work in like the rock, like straight ahead rock world. And I think because I was involved, there's definitely some classic rock like living throughout there too, you know, like some of those tracks veer on the heavy side on her record too, like Effigy and Get Out Alive are kind of like heavier tunes. And then there's like the poppy stuff, you know, like I Am the Enemy, which is like, that almost sounds more like just like pop rock. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool record, and I hope people check it out. It's something that I don't do any shredding on. I didn't think it was appropriate for her genre to turn it into that. You know, like you make the judgment call on these kind of things. I just wanted to play cool guitars on the stuff, and the main thing was hopefully then have people recognize like, hey, you can write some cool songs. And play for the song. You know, like I Am the Enemy, there was somebody on the YouTube comment section being like, man, I came here to hear like Joel Hoekstra solo, and I got this, and like you know, because I'm just quoting the vocal melody and the solo, and I'm like, yeah, man, but a good solo, if you're really a good soloist, man, you know how to play for the song. It's not always about shred, like, you know, it's not always about showing off your chops. It's sometimes like when you're playing in a different genre, you got to know how to like just play for the song, and especially when it's somebody's solo album. Like if that's marketed under a project or a band name or something, that might be different. But when you're producing somebody's solo album, it's like, well, the attention should be on her, not on me, right? So anyway, that's how I viewed that.
Well, it's even interesting. I like the song Medusa. That's about as far as I've gotten so far. But I went in the video, and even to your point there, I can't find you in the video, but I know you're there. So
yeah, man, that was that caused quite the stir online, man. When I posted a picture from the video shoot, dude, because my hair was like bobby pinned back with like the most bobby pins you've ever seen in your life. And I mean, I'd said, like, I kind of came up with a game plan for her in terms of, I said, you know, I think it would be smart to do in the videos, it's a solo album, so, you know, you should be dressed the part, and then maybe have the band be just kind of like uniform, have like, you know, like the reverse of the Robert Palmer thing with You're Addicted to Love, with the women dancing, make the guys in the band like emo bot guys, you know, like have the emo look, but playing this stuff because that's a big part of her sound and style. And I thought that would be cool. And I said, certainly I'm not going to be the guitarist, you know, because I don't fit the mold. But she was like, no, come on, do it. She's like, you know, you wrote this stuff and I want you in the videos. I was like, it's going to be a distraction, man. But I was not prepared for how bad people were going to freak out when they saw me with my hair pinned back. I talked about this with somebody who got picked up by Blabbermouth yesterday. I was laughing my ass off. There was some headline, Joel Hoekstra has no intention of cutting his hair anytime soon. And I was cracking the fuck up that there was an article about my hair.
I saw that.
I mean, I was like, that's a slow news day, man, especially when the world is blowing up, that there's an article about me not cutting my hair. But yeah, it did cause a stir, though, man. People were like, what the hell, you know, you cut your hair and this and that. And I was like, man, no, it's just pinned back. You know, to me, I was like, I didn't think much of it. I was just having fun. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, I'll be in the videos, pin the hair back and try and take on more of that emo look. And I mean, I even had to watch some of the emo guitar players to see what the hell it is they do stage move wise, because I have no idea, you know. I don't really follow those bands. So I was like, all right, let me go and see if I can learn like what it is acceptable, because if I'm playing that type of role in the videos, for me that was just fun. And I don't know, it's people, it was incredible to me that people freaked out that bad about my hair being back, and I was like, no, I have it all. It's like you don't, to me, it was like playing Halloween or something, dude. I mean, I was like, I'm just dressing up, man. I'm just doing like a different image for this, just for fun, and like, I mean, and obviously to fit the part, you know.
Sure. It's like you like a little attention on yourself, but not that much. You're like, come on now. But anyway, Joel, that's a good one too. I look forward to listening more on that one. Just going back a little bit in your back history. Listen, we could have our own episode on your back history, but you know, maybe just quickly, you've covered a lot of rock ground in your career. I mean, for those that may not know, Rock of Ages on Broadway. I think I saw it on the first year where you were there. Night Ranger, Whitesnake, filling in for Accept, so many other bands, but. You know, looking at the three biggies, like you stepped into those iconic catalogs and you had to play them live. So maybe looking back, which one was the most rewarding to play as a guitar player? And maybe which was the most challenging to walk into cold of those three bands?
Oh man, I mean that's really hard. So you're wanting to reference Night Ranger, Whitesnake, and Accept. I mean, with Accept, that was something where it was temporary, agreed upon, where I was going to go in and do South America and the European festivals. So I just tried to, if anything, keep things. You know, Wolf was great about saying, "Hey, man, take some more solos," and I was like, "Dude, that's gonna be the one thing that's gonna get hate. Is like if I come in here and I'm like throwing chops all over your gig," and I was like, "I tell you what, let's leave things as is, dude. Like, I mean, like I'm a team player. Like, let's do this Accept thing, and you tell me like what it is." You know, that's interesting because they got all kind of that group choreography with the guitars and everything, and so. That was fun. You know, I had a great time with those guys and loved my time in the camp. Night Ranger was an interesting experience because I was pretty green. You know, I'd done that Jim Peterick work and I'd been out with the Turtles and I had done Love Janis here in New York for whatever couple years. But I would say that was challenging in that it was kind of moving up a level to that guitar position that was filled by a legendary guy in Jeff Watson and Reb Beach had kind of been doing it. So that was the first time I'd be in a position like that where I suppose people really cared about, you know, your guitar position. Like you were going to get like put against some really great players and people complaining about he's no Jeff Watson or whatever. And then going into Whitesnake, I mean, dude, that's obviously a very long list of incredible players to be stepping in for. In terms of rewarding, that's really hard to compare and contrast. I mean, I will say I think if I had to pick just an incredible set list that I was able to play was the Greatest Hits tour with Whitesnake in 2016 when we went on tour with that. That was just incredible. Like picking out like. You know, just all the great Whitesnake songs and going through that. It was like every song was just kind of like, oh my gosh, man, iconic riff, iconic guitar playing. And so really fun thing to be a part of.
Sure thing. Now, talk about some of your other, let's say, outside of band things like the Rock of Ages, or let's say even a couple of years ago, you were in the band for the Dancing with the Stars hair episode. Well, I don't know, Spinal Tap moments come to mind where you could think back to your time in Rock of Ages where, I don't know, something fell off the ceiling, hit you in the head or whatever.
Oh, dude, how much time you got? I mean, it went for that time period when so what happened is Night Ranger kind of came before Rock of Ages. That got added after I'd been with Night Ranger for a tiny bit. And so 8 shows a week started there. And when Trans-Siberian Orchestra came in that time, that was also 8 shows a week during November, December. So for essentially like a 6-year period there, I was playing more shows than there were days in the year, man. I was really legitimately playing, I don't know, like maybe 400 shows a year or something like that. It was pretty crazy. So there were wipeouts and things like that happen, you know, where you bite the dust, and I think it happens eventually once you're when you're on stage that much, man. So, I mean, I guess my favorite one is probably Rock of Ages, where they had the band on this type of shape of platform. If you're looking at the stage, the band was in the back, and we weren't raised all that much. We were just maybe like a foot or two off the stage or something like that. But there wasn't a lot of room on that deck for the band. I went to do like the metal stance and spread the legs for a part, and my right foot slipped off of that and went down a little too far, and so I fell backwards, and I landed on the second guitarist's pedals, and we were using Fractal Axe Effects units on that gig, so it changed his patch on the MIDI pedal, and finally meanwhile, we have a talk back, and the music director's like, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And I'm trying to like keep playing the song and get up and like not screw the song up. But what happened is this scene where the lead male and female are about to recognize that they're in love and kiss and all this stuff, and so it stops for that moment. Like the song stops, and all you hear just cranking through the PA as I've changed the patch when my ass fell on it down the other guy's pedals to this loud, it had like modulation and just all this noise. It wasn't gated, and the sound man wasn't bringing it down, and so you just saw like the male and female lead kind of turn back around to the band platform instead of kissing and look at us like, what the hell is going on back there, man? So that was a humiliating moment. Like, I think the entire theater probably tuned into what was going on there. But I got them for every gig, honestly, man. There was one time when Whitesnake played at Surf Ballroom in Iowa, a legendary venue, but small stage, and they laid a tarp over the stage, and they didn't tape off what was the end of the actual stage and what was just tarp. I don't know if we were rushed that day or what, but I stepped in a spot where there was no stage underneath the tarp, and I just went like one leg went all the way down, and I ended up kind of like stumbling off of the stage and like hitting into the monitor console and breaking a volume knob on my guitar in the process. Thank God everything was still working. Like, I kept playing and went back up on stage and just kind of immediately was right into a double solo with Reb. So it was really funny. I was like, I just go bailing off the stage and I come like walking back up. But man, the meet and greet after, there wasn't a single person that didn't ask me, "Are you all right? Like, so we saw you fall, man." So it happens.
It does, I'm sure. Hopefully nothing like that happened really bad on TSO, because that's such a serious show and majestic. That would be really crazy if, like, you fell off the castle in the back or tripped off where the girls are singing and that kind of thing.
I did bail once, like running across. We used to have a thing in Mad Russians where we'd run down one walkway in the audience and run back up, run up the steps and cross the stage and do the same thing on the other side. And as I was running across the stage with TSO's carpeted, my toe just by like this much of my shoe caught the carpet. I just, because I was running, I just went absolutely flying, man. I just like tucked and rolled, and I thought, I did it. Like, I'm going to get back up and play my part like in time. And what happened is my body kind of fell on the wireless transmitter and just mashed it. And that was like, so that was it. I went to go play and there was nothing. And I was like, oh, damn it, man. So guitar change and back to it. But that was my TSO wipeout. And then there was a great one when we've done the kiss lifts in the past where you have the cherry pickers go out. Yeah. And so they go out in symmetry like this over the audience. And Kayla Reeves, my bandmate's normally on this one, and I'm on this one. Well, they're timed, so they come back at the same time and all this stuff. And all of a sudden I look, and Kayla's like coming back like this, and I'm still way out here, and I recognize my lift's going like really slow for some reason. And I'm like, uh-oh. And so this is the end of the show. Yeah. So we're playing Sarajevo Reprise, right? Like, and on the way back, I'm just going, oh my God, so she gets back to the stage and I'm still up on this thing drifting back, and the show ends, like they end the song and they assemble for the bows, and I'm still up in the air just like kind of slowly drifting back down towards the stage. I mean, it was like the entire audience just kind of looking up at me. I guess it had kicked into safety mode somehow. So if there was any kind of misfiring on those lifts, they'd just kick into safety mode and go really, really slowly. But it was just funny that literally the show had to end with me still in the air. So I just kind of egged on the audience to cheer at it. I think everybody recognized something had gone wrong, but it was that was a Spinal Tap moment for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, at least the house lights didn't go on and they left you there going, Joel, hey guys, I'm here. But
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
Joel, you got a busy year coming up. You got to promote these albums. Obviously, TSO is going to come again. What else do you have going on? I mean, you're going to be doing the acoustic duo shows with Brandon Gibbs. And for those that haven't seen that, including me, what is that show about?
That Brandon and I just kind of do a mix of, I'd say, like Whitesnake stuff and Poison stuff due to his affiliation with that. Our own music, so Brandon's music, stuff he did with Devil City Angels, and basically, my stuff of Joel Hoekstra's 13. We each take a solo. There's some storytelling, and usually the big thing at those is they're so cash and chill that we're able to like take a picture and say hi to everybody afterwards. And it's more of that intimate. It's like play a super scaled down tiny show, and it's fun. I mean, I love doing them, and they're great. And I'll be doing those along with Broadway's Rock of Ages band, which is kind of like me doing a cover gig, more or less. The band from the show goes out and plays the full length versions of those songs, and I play all the solos and have a solo in the show, and they basically introduce us as being from various bands, etc. So it's all kind of still good fun. I mean, I worked with those guys for 6 years. We did roughly 2,000 shows together. So it's always good to get back together with those guys and do that. And then in terms of recording, I got a new Revolution Saints album. That's with Dean Castronova from Journey coming out. That's in the mix promotion, like get the promo together phase. And then Iconic, another record from them, which I've already recorded. That's Tommy Aldridge, my Whitesnake bandmate, on drums, and Michael Sweet from Stryper, and amazing singer Nathan James from the UK, and Marco Mendoza on bass, who's out with Satch 5 band right now, etc., and played with everybody himself.
Sure. Wow, sounds like a busy year. We love
so
Marco
I mean,
Mendoza.
I just kind of always keep working, man. Like that's just the gist of things for me, is keep working on stuff, and that includes making my own music along the way. Where this is important to me is not necessarily a monetary thing. It's not really about like I'm making it for the money. I'm doing it more or less from the standpoint of like legacy. It always sounds a little self-important when you say it, but at the end of my career, I want to be about more than just a guy who had like cool gigs, but have, I have the 3 instrumental albums, and this is my 4th one now with this. So I look at it like I've released 7 albums of my own. To me, that's important. To have that. And I think if you're a melodic hard rock fan, I mean, I think you'll really like the Joel Hoekstra's 13 albums, all of them. I mean, I think there's great playing on it. And, in my opinion, I like the songs. I'm biased, of course, because I wrote them. But, I think people will probably, really like the stuff. It's super well executed by great musicians,
Well, Joel, I hope to see you down the road, maybe see you at one of these Hoekstra Gibbs shows, and, we'll talk a little bit more. So for the latest on Joel Hoekstra, tour dates, news, and all of his socials, check out joelhoekstra.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Thanks for watching Metal Mayhem ROC. Subscribe and check out another interview right here.